it's Alice, and today we are in front of my shelves because I'm going to be showing you a bunch of books based on your prompts or requests or whatever you want to call it. So I asked you both on Instagram and on YouTube for like, show me a book that ... and you could write in whatever you wanted. And you guys are really, really creative and probably more creative than me because I don't know if I can answer all of these. But I'm gonna try to answer some of them. I got a lot of them, so we can't do all of them. But I'm gonna be going through these, try to find some books for you. And also at the end, I want to share some of the ones that I can't find books for, but that I also want recommendations for. And maybe you guys can help out in the comments. We're gonna start off with an easy one. It says, show me a book that has a beautiful map. I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of my books that have maps, but I can think of a couple that have maps that I really like, which I can show you. The two that came to mind are these two books, which happen to be two of my favorite books. But before I show you the maps, I just want to mention a couple of things. Obviously, I opened the doors to these shelves, so the background looks a little bit different. The light is really shifty today as well, so if it like looks a little bit different throughout this video, I'm sorry. It's just the sun and clouds. And also, if you can hear any background noise, my neighbors are moving out, so it's making a little bit of noise. So if this is a little bit like all over the place, that's why. Anyways, the books that came to mind for beautiful maps are these two. We have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo and The Adventures of Amin al-Sarafi. And I wanted to show you both of these because Ninth House has a map of a town, and like The Adventures of Amin al-Sarafi has like a bigger map. And they're kind of different maps, but I like both of them. The map for this one is of Yale University, so it's New Haven. Maybe I love this because I love the book so much, but I really liked referring to this when I was reading it. And it has like the different secret societies that we get to learn about in this book, and I don't know. It's a university town. I just like the look of it. It's maybe not like super creative, I don't know, but I really like it. Maybe it's because I love this book. That might be the reason. In this one though, it does have a map in here, but this map is also the end papers. And on the end papers, you get them in color, which is beautiful. Let me take the dust jacket off. The map looks like this, and I think this is just beautiful. I love the colors. I love like the vintage aesthetic of it. And this is a pirate book, so I feel like it's perfect pirate vintage-ish map. I also really like the little details of like monsters in the sea and stuff. Like, I know they used to do that on old maps, so that's really cool. Speaking of maps, I do have a book about maps that I can show you, which is maybe not what this person wanted for this prompt, but it's a really cool book, so I'm gonna find it. The book that I'm thinking of is this one. This is The Phantom Atlas, which is basically a book about all the mistakes that people have made on maps throughout history, which is really cool because for a long time, obviously, we didn't know what the world really looked like. So it has loads of maps in it, so if you're a map nerd, like I am, apparently, this is very, very interesting. I have read almost this entire thing, and it was fascinating, and yeah, it's just really interesting. You also get to read about some of the explorers and the map makers. Super cool book. It's also beautiful. Moving away from the maps though, the second one we have is also pretty easy. It just says, show me a book that is a sequel you're looking forward to, even though I know you don't read a lot of series. I have two sequels that I can think of that I'm really looking forward to, although looking forward to, one of them might not be the right word to phrase it. I'm like looking forward to it, but I'm also a little scared. So I have these two books, both happen to be blue, and the one that I'm a little nervous about is this one. This is Adulthood Rights by Octavia E. Butler, and it's the sequel to the novel Dawn, which I read last year, I think, and it's like a science fiction novel about these aliens who take a bunch of people onto their spaceship and start mating with them. It's super weird. It's really disturbing. Like, that book is terrifying. And this is the second one. And I don't know what to expect, but the end of Dawn ended on a little bit of a cliffhanger in a way. I mean, it wasn't really a cliffhanger. It was a twist, or I don't know. If you've read the book, you know what I mean. And we're gonna see what happens with that in this one. And I'm scared, but also excited, because Octavia E. Butler was an amazing writer. Like, I think it's gonna be great. I'm just a little nervous because the first book was like, it was like actually really, really disturbing. The other one that I have is a little bit lighter. It's a book I actually just got in the mail. It's The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson. And this is the sequel to Her Majesty's Royal Coven. And I just got this because I want to know what happens next. I have heard mixed things about this book. I know not everyone is like super excited about the sequel, and a lot of people who liked the first book didn't really like this, but I want to give it a go. I do love a good witch book, and I did really, really enjoy the first one, so excited to see what happens in this. The previous book did end on a huge twist and a huge cliffhanger, so I need to know what happens, and hopefully I'll like it. Then someone says, show me a book that is one of those written in letters type books. I'm assuming you mean epistolary novels, which is a word I learned like a couple of years ago, so in letters makes sense. I have two that I can recommend for you that are both really good. So one is a nonfiction book. It's 84 Charing Cross Road, which is one of those books in letters that I feel like a lot of people have heard of and a lot of people have read. It's really, really good. It's about an American woman writing letters to like back and forth with this bookseller in London because she wants these books that she can't get, and it's really interesting. It's a little sad at the end, but it's very, very good. If you want a fiction novel though, I would recommend The Color Purple by Alice Walker. Amazing book. It's a book about these sisters, and I cannot recommend this book enough. I kind of went into it a little bit blind. I had heard of this book, but I didn't know what it was about before I picked it up. And I think that was a great way to go about it. So just take my word for it. This is an amazing book. I think everyone should read it. Next, someone writes, show me a book that is a mythology retelling, perfect for summer. I can think of one nonfiction and one fiction again. Maybe two fiction actually. But I really like mythology retellings, and I feel like they are perfect for summer. So let me get them. I found 3 books, and I gotta be honest, these are maybe not the most original recommendations, but they are my favorites, so I'm gonna just mention them. The first one is The Song of Achilles. This is one of my favorite books. It's beautifully written. It's not technically set in summer, but it just feels summery because it's set in Greece, so I feel like it's perfect. The second one, again, may not be that summery, but it's the Greece thing that is like making me think of summer. It's Circe. Again, this is the same author, Madeline Miller. She writes really good books. She's an amazing writer, and I love her. And then if you want something a little bit different, we have Mythos by Stephen Fry. This is technically, it goes under nonfiction, but it is retelling like Greek myths, which, depending on what you believe, are fiction. So I don't know, it's kind of like fiction slash nonfiction. It's really good though, it's a lot of fun. A thing with this as well is that if you have read this, there are 2 more books. I think it's Troy and another one, I can't remember, that are kind of the same if you want to read more. And also, in this one, read the footnotes, because the footnotes are really, really funny. Then someone writes, show me a book that is like a summer fever dream. I have the perfect book for this. I have a weirdly like small edition of this book, but I think it's beautiful. It's The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. I have a couple of these small kinds of books. I wonder if they make more, but yeah, this feels very much like a summer fever dream. Like that's exactly what it is. Moving on, someone wants, show me a book that is set in a forest slash woods. And this is really funny to me because I'm sure that I've read a bunch, but I can only really think of one. And it's also technically only like partly in the forest, but it is a big part of the book. And yeah, I'm sure I've read loads, but if any of you have any recommendations or I'm missing any obvious ones, let us all know. But the one that I'm thinking of, actually up here, it's A Psalm for the Wild Bill. I think the reason that I'm thinking of this is in part because it's not that long ago since I read it, and in part because it's really like philosophical and calm, and that's what gives me like a foresty vibe, so I'd really recommend this. It's philosophical, but it's very good. Next, we have a really good one. It says, show me a book that you wish you could read again for the first time. Top 3 maybe. And the thing about this is that you might think that I would want to read my favorite books for the first time again, but not necessarily, to be honest. I think my choices are going to be a little bit different because, let's say for The Secret History, which is my favorite book, I wouldn't want to read it again for the first time because I love rereading it now. And I'm at like a different level with it. So I think I'm going to pick some other ones that I really, really love, that I think like, because of the way that the story is, I would like to read it again for the first time. So I thought of 3 for this, but I only have 2 of them physically on my shelves because the third one I lent to a friend ages ago. I think she's had it for like over a year. I don't know if she's even read it or if she wants to, but she still has it. It's The Spy and the Traitor by Ben McIntyre, which is one of my favorite nonfiction books. It is so good, and it was so exciting. I didn't know anything about that story before I read that book, and it was like, I couldn't stop reading it. It was so exciting. So I think I'm gonna enjoy it on a reread. I want to reread it soon actually because I have forgotten a lot of it, but yeah, that was like, I would have loved to have read that for the first time again. I also think The Thursday Murder Club could be fun to read again for the first time. Again, I think I would enjoy this on a reread, but I don't know, it was just such a lovely discovery. Like, it's super cozy when I first read it, and I loved that feeling of finding this book, so it would be fun to do that again. And then this one is maybe like my main one that I wish I could read again for the first time. It's The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Because it's such a roller coaster, and like, there's no way to explain this book, but like, it has so many twists and turns, and like the whole setup of what is going on is insane. And I do think, again, it would be fun to read on a reread, but it wouldn't be the same because you know what's going on. It would be maybe a little bit less confusing on a reread though, because this is a little bit confusing the first time you read it, or at least it was for me. But yeah, such a good book. Like, what a ride. Then we have one where when I first read it, I immediately knew what book to show you. It says, show me a book that has an unlikable main character, but it's also set in a summery place. I have the perfect book for this. It's this book. This is A Ladder to the Sky by John Boyne. I don't think I've read a book with a more unlikable character than this. Like, the main character that we're following throughout this book is just horrible. Like, so unlikable, but so interesting to read about. Like, I love the way that the character is done in this book. Only the first part technically is set in a summery place. It's set in some sort of like, I think in the Riviera somewhere, and then it does move around a little bit, but the first part is very summery. But yeah, one of the most unlikable characters that I've ever read about, but also one of the most fascinating ones. Let's do a couple of the ones that I got on YouTube. Some of them I don't have books for, but I want to mention at the end, so maybe you have some recommendations, because the requests are really thought out, and I'm sure some of you can help these people even if I can't. But one that I can show you a book for is show me a book that feels like a dip into an icy pool. It's maybe a little bit basic because it's basically just a book set in winter, but it's The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. I think if you want like icy vibes, this is perfect because it's set in like the Russian wilderness where there's winter like 11 months of the year. It's also just a really beautiful, magical story, and if you need to escape the summer, this is perfect. I don't know about you, but summer is not my favorite season, so I should really be reading only these kinds of books. But yeah, summer is not my jam. It's way too hot, but yeah. This is pretty icy, I would say. I do also think, even though I don't have a physical copy of it, The Ice Palace by Tarjei Vesaas is a really good one. It's literally set in an ice palace. Like, it doesn't get more icy than that. I really need to get a copy of that book, but the Norwegian editions are so ugly. So I'm wondering if I should just get the English one because it's beautiful. Like you have this beautiful English edition and the Norwegian ones are just terrible. But yeah, it's a really good book. I did also get Show Me a Book That Will Cool Down This Oppressive Heat in New York. Hehe. JK. Kinda. I'm sure you're not joking. I'm not joking either when I say I don't like the heat. It's terrible. But I would recommend the same books for that. It's kind of like in the same vibe. The next one I have the perfect book for because I just read this book. Like, it's perfect for this. It says, show me a book that has an unhinged or obsessive main character. I just read Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. Beware if you want to read this book because it's crazy and it's like disturbing. So I don't know if I would really recommend it. Like, look into it before you read it. But it has both an unhinged and an obsessive main character who's very, very interesting. Like, you don't really like her, but then you empathize with her in certain ways. Yeah. This one is that. Then we have one that I think is really funny. It says, show me a book that you now wonder what made me buy that. And I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I'm gonna look at my shelves and see what I can find because I'm sure I have a couple. Okay, so luckily for me, this was more difficult than I thought. So maybe I've just gotten rid of all of those books. But one that comes to mind is this one. This is the Atlas 6. This had like a thing on TikTok, I think, and I bought it because of that. But when I got it, I remember thinking like, maybe I've made a mistake. Because I've heard so many mixed things about it and I don't know if I'm gonna like it. But the thing that got me is that it's kind of like dark academia, which always, like, that will get me every time. I still have kept this book though, so I do think I still want to read it, but yeah, I don't know about this one. Next, we have one that says, show me a book that has a beautiful shiny cover. Now you may know that I am very, I'm very weak for like foil on covers. Like, it just gets me, and I have so many books I could show you, but I'm gonna show you a couple that I think are beautiful because I can't show you all of them because then we'd be here all day. So these ones are all beautiful, and I also love that they have foil on the spines, like they're shiny as well. We have Voyage of the Damned. This was a little bit of a cover buy, not gonna lie, but I have read it, and although I didn't love it, I did enjoy it, so there was that, but it's very beautiful. We also have this, which I haven't read. This is Ariadne. Beautiful. It also has foil on the back. Again, I love it when they do it all the way around. And then this has a little bit of a different kind of foil where parts of it is like matte, but some parts are shiny. I haven't read this either, but I really like the cover. Then someone writes, show me a book that you want to read this summer that is also a classic. I have the perfect book for this. I have made a little like summer TBR stack over there, and it's in that pile, so that's the one that I really want to get to. It's Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery in this beautiful edition. Like, I'm so excited to read this book. I've never read it. I know, scandalous, but I think I'm gonna love this. Like, I'm so excited about it. Some of my excitement may have to do with the fact that this book is like so beautiful, and these are like the painted editions by some publisher, I can't remember, but I have 3 of these now. I have this one, I have The Secret Garden, and I have Frankenstein. And I love both Frankenstein and The Secret Garden, so I just feel like I'm gonna love this as well. In part because of the editions, but also in part because people recommend me this book all the time. And I think it's gonna be great. I'm so excited. It looks lovely. It also has some like illustrations inside as well. Beautiful. I'm sure it's gonna be great. Next, someone says, show me a book that screams summerween. I have one book for this, but I'm sure loads of you have recommendations for this because I'm not the biggest horror reader, so I don't have that many recommendations for this. But actually next year, I maybe want to do like a summerween thing because I think I could get really into it. But I do have one book for this. It's not super original, but it is kind of like summery. This one, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix, is really my only recommendation for this. It's set during summer, or like late summer, and it's about a vampire. And it has, like, I can remember some of the horror scenes from this, and they're pretty pretty grim, but like it is the kind of horror that I can deal with, and my level of what horror I can deal with is pretty low. But this was like a good read, I think. Maybe this fits Summerween. I don't really know if I know what Summerween is, but this is my best guess. Next, we have show me a book that lets you feel that you are on a dreamy 6-week long summer vacation. I don't know if, I mean, I do have a couple for this, but I don't know if it's like, they're not that summery, but they're like a little bit on the longer side, and so you feel like really immersed in them. That's the best I can do. So all of these books are quite chunky, so it might take you 6 weeks to read them, but like if you're going on a long holiday, these might be good to take. The first one I thought of was The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I think this is really immersive and beautiful. I also get summer vibes from this because I think I read it in summer. So I don't actually remember if it is, but it's really, really good. Then we have The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. Very immersive. It's the kind of book where you follow a person from their birth to their death. Really, really good. And then my favorite one out of these, Fresh Water for Flowers by Valerie Perrin. I loved this book. This is one of my favorite books that I've read this year. So immersive, beautiful, and there are some like twists and turns in this weirdly, and it's just so good. Highly, highly recommend. Okay, we're gonna do a couple more before we round this off. I am boiling. It is so hot in here and I'm dying, so we just need to wrap this up. I also feel like I've been talking for ages. But the next one says, show me a book that you will never read again. And I know exactly the book to show you. Obviously there are lots of books that I really didn't like that I would never read again, but I'm gonna show you a book that I did like. War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. I think I mentioned this in the last video that I did like this as well, to like a similar question. I'm never gonna read this again. I read it, I did it, it's done. I also want to do this one. It says, show me a book that has the best friendships. I have several books about friendships, but I really want to show you this one because it's perfect to read for summer. It's Miss Benson's Beetle by Rachel Joyce. If you haven't read this book, it's a beautiful story about female friendship, and it's an adventure, and it is also set in a hot place, so it's perfect. I wish more people would read this book because it's just so freaking good. This is also a book, now that I think of it, that I would have loved to read again for the first time, because reading it for the first time was such an experience. And the end, like, now I know what happens, but it really caught me off guard, and it's just a beautiful book. Alright, so the last one that we're gonna do is show me a book that has a really weird opening sentence, and I of course thought of this. This is 1984 by George Orwell. It has one of my favorite opening sentences ever. It says, "It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. So good. Now, before we go, like I mentioned, I want to share some of the ones that I couldn't think of any books for, and I'm hoping some of you have recommendations, not just for these people, but also for me, because a lot of these just sound amazing. So if anyone has any recommendations, let us all know. The first one says, show me a book that has an 80s vibe, not sci-fi or romance, but has like theme park with the smell of popcorn and cotton candy vibe, and where you can hear the screams of the people coming from the roller coaster. That's so creative, and I hope someone has some recommendations for that. I also got a couple about like summer camps. One of them says, I'm a little bit obsessed with summer camp series and movies. Even if they are horror or scary, I love the nostalgic feel. I've never been to a summer camp actually, but I really like those kinds of stories as well, so if anyone has any recommendations, let us all know. Then we have one that I also think sounds beautiful, but I can't really recommend anything for this because I haven't read the book that this person mentions. It says, I've been looking for another fiction book, beautifully written, that treats nature and trees with the admiration and intensity of Overstory. I haven't read that book, but I feel like I should. I feel like I would like it, but it's a really big book, so I'm scared. Another one that I struggled with was show me a book that is cozy but has summer vibes. I couldn't really think of any appropriate for this. Maybe it's because I don't find summer cozy at all. So even when books are set in summer, I don't feel like they're cozy, even if they kind of are. So I don't have that many recommendations for this, but if you have, please let me and this person know. And then the last one I really, really want recommendations for. And the person who asked for this is my kind of person. It says, show me a book that reminds you of autumn / Gilmore Girls / small town vibes. I want that too. I want autumn right now. I'm so over summer, but if anyone has any recommendations for this, I would love to know. I feel like no one can really ever hit that like Gilmore Girls recommendation, but if you think you can, let us all know, because I love that show and I would love to read books that are like that. Alright, that was it for this video though. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making it, but now I am gonna go like lay in front of a fan with some ice cubes or something because it is way too hot. But yeah, thank you very much for hanging out with me today as always, and I will see you soon. Bye!